Over the last 30 years, the top 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth. The bottom half of America has seen a $900 billion decline in their wealth.
While most of us are juggling bills and squeezing every dollar, there's a select group playing by an entirely different set of rules. They are the people with money. Recently, Elon Musk's added a whopping $70 billion since Trump's presidential win, making him worth $308 billion. So why is it that no matter how hard most of us hustle, the rich just seem to get richer? In this video, we're breaking down the secrets behind the wealth divide and why some people keep stacking cash while others struggle to keep up. Get ready to dive into the shocking reasons behind one of the world's biggest financial mysteries.
So what you have in America today is a relatively small number of incredibly wealthy people. And I deal with these guys every day. People say, oh, we're talking about rich. You don't know what rich is.
Some big names in the industry have always stayed on top of the billionaires list, and their wealth has only been increasing. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk are just a few names who have the money, power, and resources to move mountains. According to the World Bank, 44% of the global population lives below the line poverty with less than $6.85 per day, and incomes around the world, on average, would have to increase fivefold to reach the level of $25 per person per day, which is the minimum prosperity standard for high-income countries. Another shocking figure is this: almost half of the world's wealth, which is roughly around $213 trillion, is held by the top 1.5% of the global adult population. So why is it that the rich are only getting richer, while the rest of us have only increased our worries with rising living costs and decreasing affordability? Why is wealth distribution so unjust? To understand wealth inequality, let's first define what wealth and wealth inequality actually mean in practical terms. Wealth generally refers to the total assets an individual owns, like property, investments, savings, and other valuable resources, minus any debts. Unlike income, which is the money someone earns through work or investments, wealth is more about the cumulative financial resources a person or family has built up over time. This makes wealth a critical measure of financial security and opportunity, as it provides a buffer in hard times and can create opportunities for future generations. Wealth inequality is the uneven distribution of these accumulated assets across society. The US has the highest number of millionaires, with some 21.95 million people having wealth in 7 figures or more. China is on the second spot with 6.01 million millionaires, followed by the UK with 3.06 million. In the US, wealth inequality has grown significantly since the 1980s, with a particularly stark increase in wealth for the top 5%. And a more stagnant situation for middle and lower income families. This gap has been fueled by multiple factors like asset appreciation, while wage growth has been slow for most workers. Why the rich get richer? Key mechanisms. You know what is the key difference between the rich getting richer and the rest of the population living paycheck to paycheck? The ability to take risk. The rich know how to multiply their money, and they have the courage to put it on the line to grow. Most of us are too afraid to lose it all, and that's why we let go of many opportunities just because they seem too risky. The phrase, "the rich get richer," isn't just a saying. It's driven by specific financial mechanisms that help the wealthy accumulate even more wealth over time. Here's how they do it. 1. Compound interest and investments. Wealthy individuals leverage their investments, allowing them to grow money passively. Investments like stocks, real estate, and bonds are made to compound over time, meaning that not only does their principal, which is the initial amount, grow, but any returns also generate their own returns. Compound interest is powerful over time. For example, a $1 million investment with an average return of 7% will double in about 10 years without any additional input. Regular people can benefit from this too, but the wealthy typically invest larger amounts, so their growth is faster and more substantial. Tax advantages and loopholes. The tax system has several features that allow wealthy people to pay less tax on their earnings, especially when compared to most regular workers. One of the biggest advantages for the wealthy is the lower tax rate on capital gains, which are profits from selling investments like stocks or real estate. While regular wages are taxed at up to 37% in the US, long-term capital gains are taxed at only 20%. This is why people who make most of their money through investments rather than regular jobs often end up paying a smaller percentage in taxes. Another strategy the wealthy use is deferring taxes. They can wait to pay taxes on certain types of income until later, sometimes even passing this wealth to their heirs. For example, Elon Musk, whose wealth grew mainly from Tesla stock, didn't pay much tax until he actually sold some of his shares. This allowed him to avoid big tax bills as long as he held onto the stock, even as his net worth skyrocketed. There's also tax loss harvesting, where investors strategically sell assets at a loss to cancel out other gains, reducing their taxable income for the year. These legal but complex moves let the rich minimize their taxes, adding to their ability to keep growing their wealth. Exclusive access to wealth-building tools. The wealthy have access to wealth-building resources unavailable to most. This includes high-level financial advisors, private equity funds, and hedge funds that are restricted to accredited investors with at least $1 million in net worth or high annual income. These funds often offer returns that outperform traditional investments, creating a cycle of rapid wealth growth. Real estate and leverage. Real estate is a favorite of the wealthy because it often appreciates over time and can be purchased with leverage, which means you use borrowed money. For instance, if someone buys a property with 20% down, any price increase applies to the total property value, not just their initial investment. This magnifies returns and is especially profitable when property values rise significantly. Business ownership. Owning a business is another massive wealth generator. Entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk have grown their wealth by founding companies and retaining ownership shares, which increase in value as the companies grow. Business ownership also comes with tax benefits that can reduce taxable income, such as deductions for expenses and depreciation. Passing down wealth through inheritance. Wealth is often transferred from one generation to the next, providing young heirs with a substantial financial head start. In the US, the wealthiest 1% inherit nearly twice as much as the bottom 50% combined. And this reinforces the existing wealth inequality. Structural issues that widen the gap. Typically speaking, we have 4 income classes: low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income. Structural issues present in our society play a big role in widening the wealth gap, making it harder for lower and middle-income families to build wealth while the rich keep getting richer. And this has a direct effect on the financial standing of families. Let's break down some key factors that drive this divide. Unequal access to quality education. Education is often called the great equalizer, but its quality is highly unequal. In wealthier areas, schools receive more funding through property taxes, giving students access to better resources, teachers, and facilities. Meanwhile, schools in low-income areas struggle with underfunding, which impacts students' future earning potential. Studies show that students from high-income families are 5 times more likely to graduate from college than those from low-income families. Without a college degree or quality training, job opportunities become limited, making it harder to move up financially. Healthcare costs and access. Healthcare costs are another structural factor that widens the gap. The US healthcare system, for example, is one of the most expensive in the world, and many low-income families struggle to afford it. A significant medical bill can wipe out savings, and people without insurance are at even greater risk of financial hardship due to medical debt. Outstanding medical debt has become the largest source of debt collection in the US, affecting 1 in 5 Americans. This type of debt can prevent people from investing or saving for the future, creating a cycle that keeps people from moving up economically. Wage stagnation and minimum wage issues. For decades, wages for middle and low-income workers have barely grown when adjusted for inflation, while the cost of living, housing, healthcare, and education has continued to rise. Since the 1980s, the average income for the top 1% has grown by 343%, while wages for the bottom 90% have only increased by 26%. This wage stagnation makes it tough for most people to save or invest, trapping them in paycheck-to-paycheck living, while those at the top benefit from higher incomes and investment opportunities. Tax structure favoring the wealthy. Tax policies in many countries favor capital gains over wages, Rich people who earn more from investments than from salaries end up paying a lower effective tax rate. Additionally, inheritance laws allow wealth to pass relatively untaxed to heirs, creating generational wealth. In the US, the estate tax exemption has risen from $675,000 in 2001 to $13.61 million in 2024, meaning most large inheritances are no longer taxed. Globalization and its impact on wealth distribution. Before globalization, economies around the world operated mostly in isolation. Each country relied heavily on local industries, resources, and labor. Trade between countries was limited, costly, and often slowed down by high tariffs and trade restrictions meant to protect domestic industries. This made goods more expensive and reduced innovation, as countries were largely confined to what they could produce within their own borders. In wealthier nations, economic growth was often centered on manufacturing and agriculture, while many developing nations primarily relied on exports of raw materials. The rise of globalization in the late 20th century dramatically changed this landscape. Advances in transportation and technology, especially the internet and container shipping, allowed businesses to easily reach international markets and source cheaper labor abroad. Companies in developed countries began to outsource production to regions with lower labor costs, allowing them to cut expenses and expand profit margins. At the same time, globalization opened up access to cheaper goods and new markets, boosting economic growth in some parts of the world, particularly in Asia. This shift, however, also contributed to widening wealth inequality. While multinational corporations and their executives benefited greatly from cost savings and larger markets, the wealth was not evenly distributed. In countries like the United States, outsourcing led to job losses in manufacturing and stagnant wages for many workers. Meanwhile, tax havens and profit-shifting practices allowed global corporations to avoid taxes in their home countries, costing governments worldwide around $245 billion each year in lost revenue that could have funded public services and infrastructure improvements. For developing countries, globalization lifted millions out of poverty, especially in regions where manufacturing jobs surged, like China and Southeast Asia. Yet within these countries, wealth inequality often rose as a small group of elites gained most of the financial benefits. Globalization brought about immense growth, but it also created a system where wealth accumulates at the top. This has led to a global economy that is interconnected, yet marked by a widening divide between the wealthy and everyone else. So can this wealth gap ever be closed? Closing the wealth gap is a complex challenge, but it's worth exploring the range of possibilities that could help narrow it. Many people believe change needs to start with fairer wages. In the past few decades, wages for the average worker have stagnated, while the cost of living has gone up. Increasing the minimum wage or adjusting salaries for inflation could help workers gain more financial stability, allowing them to save and invest. Some countries, like Australia, have a relatively high minimum wage and low income inequality, suggesting that fair wages might help reduce wealth gaps in other places too. Tax reform is another frequently discussed option. The current tax system in many countries, especially the US, tends to favor wealth over work. Income from investments, like stocks, is often taxed at lower rates than income from regular wages, which benefits those who already have significant assets. Adjusting tax rates so that wealth is taxed more similarly to wages could help reduce inequality. Many countries could also reconsider estate taxes on large inheritances. Wealth often gets passed down through generations, and higher inheritance taxes could prevent large concentrations of wealth in a few families while funding public services. Access to affordable education and healthcare can also play a huge role. Right now, education quality often depends on where you live, and healthcare can be a huge financial burden for families. Providing quality education to all children, regardless of their family's income, could improve job opportunities and earning potential. Similarly, affordable healthcare would protect people from falling into poverty due to medical expenses, which is a leading cause of financial hardship for many families, especially in countries without universal health care. Promoting financial literacy could also help individuals build wealth. Wealthier families often pass down not just money, but also knowledge about investing, saving, and managing money. If financial education were part of every school's curriculum, more people would have the tools to make informed financial decisions, manage debt, and start investing earlier in life. Some people advocate for universal basic income, which would give everyone a set amount of money each month to cover basic needs. Though experimental, UBI programs in countries like Finland have shown that even a small monthly boost can improve financial stability for lower income class without impacting their motivation to work. Psychological and societal impacts. The wealth gap doesn't just impact finances. It has deep psychological and societal effects, shaping how people view themselves, others, and their futures. Wealth inequality influences everything from mental health to social interactions, and these impacts are magnified by the constant exposure to wealth differences on social media. Mental health strain. Studies show that high levels of wealth inequality can harm mental health, especially for those at the lower end of the income spectrum. According to a 2020 study published by the American Psychological Association, population in low-income brackets face higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression due to financial instability and the social stigma often associated with poverty. Chronic stress from financial insecurity can also lead to physical health issues, such as high blood pressure and an increased risk of heart disease. The World Health Organization found that people in wealthier countries with high inequality, such as the US and the UK, report significantly higher levels of stress compared to more economically equal societies like Denmark or Finland. Social comparison and media influence. Social media has intensified these psychological impacts by bringing constant exposure to luxury lifestyles. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are filled with influencers flaunting designer clothes, exotic vacations, and luxury cars, often portraying an unrealistic image of what's normal. Seeing these posts can create feelings of inadequacy or failure among those who can't afford the same things. Studies from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who spent less time on social media reported feeling less lonely and less likely to compare themselves negatively to others. The youth is especially vulnerable to these comparisons. In a survey by the American Psychological Association, 90% of teens and young adults in the US admitted that social media amplifies social comparison, making them more aware of income differences and, in many cases, less satisfied with their own financial situation. Social and community divide. High wealth inequality also affects social cohesion, meaning people feel less connected and trusting of others. In communities where there are sharp contrasts between wealthy and low-income areas, people are often segregated by wealth, leading to less interaction across economic classes. This can reduce empathy between groups, weakening the sense of community. Studies by the National Bureau of Economic Research suggest that in areas with high inequality, people are less likely to participate in community activities or trust their neighbors. Political disengagement and distrust. On a broader societal level, the wealth gap can also lead to a sense of powerlessness and political disengagement. When wealth is concentrated in a small segment of the population, that group often has more influence over political decisions, which can make others feel their voices don't matter. According to Pew Research, about 70% of Americans feel that the economic system unfairly favors the wealthy. This sense of marginalization can lead to reduced civic participation, as people feel that voting or community involvement won't change their circumstances. Aspirational stress and economic pressure. For those in middle-income brackets, exposure to wealth on social media often fosters an aspirational mindset, pushing them to keep up by living beyond their means. This pressure can lead to debt, as people finance their lifestyles through credit cards or loans to project an image of success. Research from the Federal Reserve reveals that the average American household carries around $7,236 in credit card debt, and much of this can be traced back to the desire to maintain a certain standard of living. Bridging the wealth divide. So what's being done to really address this major issue that affects the lives of so many people on this planet? It's a massive challenge, and while some countries and organizations are actively tackling it, the progress varies from region to region. One standout example is Norway, which has implemented policies specifically aimed at reducing income inequality. Norway uses a progressive tax system that taxes the wealthy at higher rates and then channels these funds into comprehensive welfare programs like universal health care, education, and unemployment benefits. This approach has helped Norway achieve one of the lowest levels of income inequality among developed nations, with a low Gini coefficient, which is a statistical measure that indicates the level of income inequality within a population with a value of 0 being perfect. Norway tops at 22.7, which by the way is 39.8 in the US. But it's not just about taxes and welfare. Norway and similar countries like Finland have invested heavily in education and upskilling, so people across all income levels have opportunities to improve their economic standing. Finland, for instance, offers free college education, which significantly reduces barriers for lower-income individuals to pursue high-paying careers. These educational investments don't come cheap. Finland spends about 12,000 to 13,000 euros per student annually, but the result is a more skilled workforce, higher wages, and a more balanced economy. We can't forget that these countries are considered wealthy and can spend on their citizens, but like everything else in this world, nothing comes easy, and there are hurdles everywhere. Wealthier individuals and corporations sometimes find loopholes to avoid higher taxes, and enforcing fair taxation policies often proves challenging and costly. Then there are balancing taxes with economic growth. If taxes are too high, it may discourage investment and entrepreneurship. For example, when Sweden raised taxes excessively in the 1970s, many wealthy citizens left, reducing overall tax revenues. In poorer countries, bridging the wealth gap is even more challenging due to limited resources, but some innovative programs show promising results. For instance, in Brazil, the Bolsa Familia program provides cash transfers to low-income families with a maximum monthly income of $218, with requirements for kids to attend school and get regular health checkups. Research shows that the Bolsa Familia program has brought millions of families out of hunger and helped Brazil reduce its poverty rate by 15%, showing how direct cash support can uplift the poorest. Another approach is microfinance, seen in Bangladesh through the Grameen Bank, which offers small loans of up to $2,500 to help people start businesses. By targeting low-income women, Grameen Bank has helped millions gain financial independence. Closing the wealth gap is tough mainly because of politics and public policy. Wealthy people and big corporations often have a lot of influence over politicians, using things like campaign donations and lobbying to shape laws in their favor. This makes it harder to pass policies that would reduce inequality, like higher taxes on the rich or better support for low-income families. In the US, for example, the richest 10% control a large portion of the wealth, and most Americans haven't seen their incomes rise much in recent decades. What is there to learn? So what have we learned by looking at the details of such a hugely impacting issue of the 21st century? The wealth divide is driven by both systemic issues and personal factors, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Wealthy people benefit from investments that grow over time, like stocks and property, while lower-income families typically lack access to these assets and rely mainly on wages, which grow more slowly. Tax policies often favor investment income, benefiting the rich disproportionately. Wealthier individuals and corporations also influence politics, helping to shape policies that protect their interests. Additionally, access to quality education and healthcare varies by income, making it even harder for lower-income families to build wealth. And all of these factors contribute to the rich getting richer and the wealth divide getting bigger. Press the like button if you liked the video, and subscribe for more interesting ones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another one soon.